So this is our steering quadrant cover panel. When we first bought the boat, we noticed that when we stepped on it, it was squishy and it would bend. And that's not good because when you're at the helm, you have to constantly straddle it to make sure that you're not busting through. We took it out. We realized that inside there is all just rotten. It just kind of flakes apart. All the wood inside is rotten. So the plan is to cut the perimeter of this on the inside, take everything out of there, and then fill it up with new core material. And that should make it structurally sound again. This is our first go at a fiberglass job, so we'll see how it turns out. So let's get to work. Okay, so we got the skin off the back and got the old core removed. This is what it looks like now. Nice and smooth in there. It did get nicked up a few places and there were a few stubborn spots where you just had to go for it. So it's not in the best condition, but it was cracked to begin with. You can't really lose. Worst case scenario, we just build a new panel from scratch. So this is the new port that'll go in there. So the next step is to cut the wood, the balsa core, to go in here for a structure. So the first thing we're going to have to do is trace this off onto a piece of cardboard. So we traced our panel, and the next thing to do is to cut the wood to fit this shape. But we don't want it to be the size of the outside of the panel. We want it to be the size of the inside panel with a little bit of a gap so we can add some epoxy as a filler around the edge. We might add a little bit more where the screws go, just to make sure that those screws also go through only epoxy and not through wood. So after a whole lot of trimming, we got the template cut. And we got our balsa core material. So now the next step is to make the balsa the shape of the template. So we got our balsa core cut, and it slides right in there into the skin. Just drops right in there like that. I left a good sized gap here. We're going to fill this gap with thickened epoxy. And this gap that's around the perimeter is also going to be filled with thickened epoxy. One thing, there are holes in this, so the epoxy will just run right out. So we're going to do two things. One, we're going to cover the holes with some duct tape so that it doesn't escape. And two, we're going to build a bit of a dam around this inspection port to hold the epoxy in, because we don't want the inspection port on there while we're using the epoxy. So we'll build up a dam to hold the epoxy. So that is the next phase. So I've applied the duct tape to the front of the panel. A little excessive on the hole, the big hole, but basically I just, everywhere there was a crack, I put duct tape. Everywhere there was a hole, anything that's going to leak through got covered in duct tape. So the first step is going to be put unthickened epoxy on this to let it soak it up a little bit so it doesn't soak up the thickened epoxy. Then we'll put thickened epoxy down, core in, and then fill in the gaps and let it cure. So we got the core material epoxied in, and it looks okay on this side. It doesn't look any worse than it did when we started. There are a few extra nicks here and there, but this side is the side with the core, and it ain't pretty, but it should be functional. So next thing we're going to do is put some blue tape around the edge to sort of protect it so that I can put the back pieces on. I'm going to go with one layer of chop mat instead of two, because the chop mat that I got is really thick. Then we're going to do a layer of the woven cloth. got all the edges smoothed off, all rounded over. Everything's nice and smooth and clean. There are a few bubbles in this. I kind of figured that would happen because I don't really know what I'm doing. There's also a few divots where when it was setting I pushed on it because I thought that would be fun. Turns out don't do that. So another lesson learned, but it looks like it's pretty well sealed up around the edges, and we have a ring of epoxy where we can put our inspection port. So that is the next step. I got some number 8 by 3/4 inch pinhead screws to pre-drill the holes, so those will go in, and we also got some Loctite marine adhesive sealant, which we will put under this. Yeah, so the next step, get this in there, drill some holes, screw it down, seal it up, and then we're pretty much ready to take it back to the boat. So the panel is complete. We've got the inspection port installed, filled in the backs of these holes with a little bit of sealant. Probably don't need to do that, it might be better for water to just run through. Kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm pleased with the way it turned out. It's not the best job in the world, but it beats sending the panel off to Catalina and them charging me $371 or whatever it was. All told, I think it was maybe around $150 worth of material, and it was a good learning experience. So the next time we need to do a panel or anything like that, we'll be that much better at it. So now we just got to take her back to the boat. So we got our panel repaired and we're back at the boat, so now we just have to install it. And before we left, we put this pink insulation on here with blue tape around it to try to keep the water out. Don't know if it worked or not. We'll find out. But right now, there is hardly any water in there at all. So let's get the new panel in place and be on our way. So now all we have to do is wait for it to rain. Good times. High five.